And we are live here to chat about tonight's episode of Arrow, which was the 150th episode of Arrow, entitled Emerald Archer. Do you get it? Do you get it? It's a Green Arrow, Emerald. You get it. Okay. And, wow. You know, every week I say my hair's a mess, but this week in particular, it's really raising the bar for how much of a mess it could be. So it's episode 12 of season 7, and it was the 150th, so it was shot in a slightly different style than what we've seen before. It was kind of shot confessional camera style. The premise is that there is a camera crew following around Oliver and the team. We kind of get the setup for this premise last episode where Oliver's trying to rehab his image, right? He does those interviews with the DA and all that sort of stuff. It's a continuation of that. There's a reporter who wants to follow him around, and we see quite a lot of that through their camera lens, and then we see a good bit that's just sort of like off sides, and it's shot in the normal Arrow style, so it kind of cuts back and forth depending on whether they're allowing the camera crew there, right? I feel like I'm about to sneeze. I was about to sneeze. So, as per usual, I would love to hear your guys' rating on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being you hated everything about it and it was the worst episode you've ever seen, and 5 being that you loved it and it was a perfect Arrow 150th tribute. So just jumping in the chat. Carrie Johnson says, "What's good, people?" Oh, what's good, Carrie? Bruna says, hello. Hello, Bruna. Love it. And Stormy says, "I had high hopes with this episode, but that didn't last long. I give the episode a 3 out of 5. Yeah, I want to hear everybody else's ratings too. So those of you watching now, those of you watching later, go ahead and drop your rating from 1 to 5 in the chat. Oh, Kate says 4 out of 5. That's pretty good. I think I would give this episode pretty close to a 4 out of 5 as a just regular Arrow episode. As a 150th episode, ooh, it kind of drops to like below a 3 at this point, to be honest. Yeah, Bruna gives it a 3.5 out of 5. And yeah, I think that for 150th, I think the bar raises for me just a little bit. I kind of want to see something a bit above and beyond, kind of like a mid-season or season finale, but without the pressure of it having to be an end. The 150th, similar to 100th or any sort of landmark episode that falls in the middle of the season, just gives an opportunity to do a very nostalgic look back, big deal episode that doesn't have the plot pressure of being an ending episode. So that's the important distinction. You want the hype of a finale, but without the plot of it being an end. And unlike the crossovers, you also don't want it to be sort of a standalone thing that doesn't fit within the big story, because it is centered entirely on Arrow. It's not a crossover. It's not something that needs to be sort of dismissed. It's something that stays with us and stays with our, canon of Arrow, but is just sort of a very special episode. If I were to give an example of a scene that I think is a good candidate for being like a 100th episode or 150th episode scene, I would give the scene where mostly the whole team centered around Oliver is out fighting a pretty big team of bad guys, and William had been very resistant to Oliver being the Green Arrow, and Oliver finally had to suit up temporarily for it, even though he had promised William he wouldn't. And William is seeing his dad fight as the Green Arrow for really the first time in that sort of context. And we see Felicity kind of orchestrating this team. You hear this beautiful background music, and Felicity is giving William the talk of what it means to be a hero and what makes his dad a hero. And it's just this beautiful legacy look where there are, in her speech, there's nods back to things that have been incorporated since season 1 of Arrow. There's this consistent musical theme that had been scored to be referential from past Arrow episodes. You see Oliver fighting with certain fighting styles that we've seen since season 1, and then you see it come full circle that now his son is finally seeing him as a hero. That is the kind of content that was not in the 100th or 150th episode, but that's the kind of content I would really expect to see in a sort of seminal episode like that. And I don't know, you tell me what you felt about this. I don't know that we saw too much of that in this episode. We saw the format for it with the confessional camera. They really set themselves up to where they could have had a lot of really good insight into the characters and how the characters felt about the Green Arrow, the team, heroism, being a hero currently or being a hero in the past for the team. And I don't know, other than a couple bits there at the beginning, I'll give Thea, Sin, and Ragman as an example. I don't know that we saw too much of that other than characters that are now past, so they're no longer with us. Stormy says, given who wrote this episode, I shouldn't be surprised Felicity was barely involved. This episode was not written by the usual creative team that we have for season 7, which, as Stormy seems to insinuate, is pretty obvious from this episode. I believe this episode was written by Mark Guggenheim, and the current showrunner that wrote the first half of season 7 that we all loved so much was Beth. And I'm sure she was still quite heavily involved in this episode, but it was written by the showrunner or the co-showrunner of season 1. Season 1 had Mark Guggenheim and Andrew Kreisberg, and Andrew Kreisberg is no longer with the franchise, as I'm sure you all know. And if you don't know, Google it. Carrie says, I may be in the minority, but I loved it. 4.5 out of 5. The old faces were really cool. It was really nice getting to see a lot of old but familiar faces. We saw faces obviously from the other shows. You saw Sarah from Legends, and you saw Grant Barry from Flash. So that was kind of fun. It was like a crossover episode, but actually Arrow-centric, which is fun and fresh because we've never got that before. Carrie says it's probably because I didn't think of much of it being episode 150. I just took it for what it was. Yeah, well, what it was Arrow 150, but it was kind of, they did seem to focus it more around the format than it being the 150th episode and it being a look back. With that said, we did have, for the 100th episode, correct me if I'm wrong, that's the one that coincided with the alien invasion where Oliver sees those other futures, where, his parents could have not died, Thea could have stayed, Laurel was still alive, Roy was still alive, whatever, and he ends up leaving that future for the current, or he leaves that reality for the current reality. He wants this reality, which was similar to this in that it really focused a lot on paying homage to characters who have left us, and maybe in some ways took a backseat to the current character development going on right now, which I don't really mind. So what I'd like to see is homage to past characters in ways that further current character development or current character understanding. So, for example, if we took Diggle, right, we've had some past family members of his brother, his like sister-in-law / ex type of thing, that we just haven't seen in ages now. I think if, for example, this episode were to, in some small way, like pay tribute to them or bring them back, which it didn't. If it was done in a way that really furthers our understanding of Diggle and maybe answers some of the questions we've had about Diggle this season, there's been a lot of questions kind of going around about why his character is so much different this season, and written different, portrayed differently, possibly it almost seems to have a different morality this season than usual. If there were some sort of references to past characters that we've had tied to his life that sort of explain that, that would be a really well integrated plot point, I think. That would be kind of an example of what I would have liked to see. Stormy says 100th episode was great because it took place during the alien crossover. Yeah, it was the alien crossover, I was right. Bruno says, I love the documentary format, and I started off so incredibly and then slowly fell. Yeah, I love The Office. I was kind of excited to see the confessional camera thing, and that's such a good format for if you're doing a very character-driven story. So if it's not necessarily about the plot, but about furthering the characters, which a 100th episode, 150th, whatever episode, absolutely can. It's not supposed to be like a big plot-centric finale. It's supposed to be something that sort of honors where the show has been and where it's going type of thing. I think the documentary style was fun. I think it was maybe a little underutilized. But it was a good format to bring back past characters. Stormy says Renee was being smug, self-righteous douchebag. Well, what's new? I mean, that was one thing, was seeing Renee written the way he has been written before in, I've got like eyeshadow under my eye. It's been a long day. Seeing Renee written the way he has been written in past seasons was interesting in this episode. It was definitely a good indicator of the fact that creative control of this episode overlaps with creative control of season 6 and before, because Renee was written how he used to be written back then, which was insufferable and not in the good way. Yeah, Maria Z says this episode had a lot of potential, but it went downhill. There was a lot of good stuff that could be done with Felicity, and then she was sidelined for non-linear stories. Yeah. Felicity could have been a really interesting addition to this episode if she had been given some sort of plot or character development as well, or character moment, I suppose, character presentation. It doesn't have to be development, but just reveal a little bit more about her, because we've had her on Arrow for such a long time, and we've had a lot of characters, like past characters who've come and gone, who've been tied to her. So that makes her, you know, there's a lot you could pull from, but also from the perspective of sort of giving this episode heart based on past characters. One of the things the show can't really bring back, and was kind of already touched on in the 100th episode, was the past Queen family. And the 100th episode really does sort of pay homage to the past Queen family, where we see Robert and Moira and Oliver and Thea in the old Queen family home, and with all the connections and friends that they used to have, and Tommy and all of that. And it pays tribute to that, and then shows Oliver moving towards the future instead, which includes obviously Felicity, William, and all of that. And now in the last 2 seasons, but especially last season, we've really seen them build a family around Oliver, Felicity, William, Reza, and that they're tied to the Diggle family as well. It's currently had ups and downs, but that is a family tie. Diggle is like a brother to him, right? So that family, so OTA inclusive, is really now the Queen family. That's now the heart of the show. And I think the 150th episode could have really paid tribute to that as sort of a jumping stone moving forward, showing that they've now, since the 100th, really built this new/old Queen family. We have William back, as we did see him in this episode, but it wasn't really the format that we saw him in. And they could have brought in Reza and all of that. And we could have really got a chance to see the new Queen family, which gives then Oliver something to lose again. Having Team Arrow arrested as well as in this episode just felt very much over-familiar, overdone, overused. It's been done before. It felt like an exact replication of prior plots. Carrie says, I do wish we'd gotten a moment with Walter, being kind of a proud dad figure for Ollie. Yeah, Walter is one I really wish they would bring back. And Walter was one that, interestingly, is almost tied more to Felicity than is tied to Oliver. Walter really interacted more with Felicity than he interacted with Oliver, and Felicity actually only joined Team Arrow to save Walter. And her kind of caveat was that's what she wanted to do because Walter was always nice to her, and Walter hired her, and that was always a very sweet relationship. We see that in episode 7 of season 1 as well. Their dynamic and how much potential Walter sort of sees in her when she's still this, you know, totally new, fresh genius, but, you know, new to everything. I always thought that was really nice. That could have been fun, and it would have given, again, Oliver some more family to interact with. Suzanne says, Diggle lies. No Felicity being called a hero. Rude William, annoying NTA, so-so episode. Yeah, I mean, those are the downsides, really. And there were upsides as well. Like I said, if I were to rate this episode as just an episode, not as the 150th, it would be up there. It's like a 4 out of 5, 8 out of 10 type of situation where it has some really fantastic moments where I'd be like, oh, you know, like Theo was there and Sin was there and Ragman was there, and that's just exciting and fun, and it would have bumped any average episode up there. But I suppose with the 150th, we maybe just have, and by we, I mean me, the royal we, maybe just have a little bit higher expectations where I would like to see, you know, some characters come back as much as possible, the ones that, you know, have that availability and stuff, but also something great for the characters that we still have with us. I don't know. Maybe I'm asking for too much. Maria Z says the documentary could have been about the journey of Oliver, the birth of OTA, and how these two people helped Oliver to change his crusade to help their city. Yeah, I would watch that. That sounds fantastic. Stormy says, I think William's sexuality that was hinted at in Zoe is the reason he was expelled, and we get to see him coming out to his parents. Yeah, I liked that that story was started. I'm so excited about William's story, William coming out, William as a character at this point. I think they aged him up really fast, which was a brilliant decision. But I wish that story had been maybe resolved in this episode almost. Like they could have had him come back a couple episodes ago and have it build up to now, because instead it's just this mystery that gets started this episode rather than getting to see like heartwarming positive family moments out of it, and you know, Oliver's son really getting to know and show who he is. I don't know. I'm not really opposed to how they're doing it. It's not the way maybe I would have done it, but that's why they pay me $0 and 0 cents. Carrie says, let me take another shot at blasphemy. I liked the few seconds that Diaz was on character, and his point wasn't totally wrong. I mean, I like that he was only there for a few seconds. I like that for once the words he was saying actually were decipherable. I'm just messing with you. His part really wasn't bad. It was confessional cameras, and I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. I like when we get to see little bits of like characters saying things that they wouldn't otherwise say without some sort of contrived situation where there's somebody finally listening to, you know what I mean? Let's see. Stormy says, I'm back to thinking Maya is Oliver and Felicity's kid. She's watching a tape of Oliver's, working with excuse me. Hold on, am I going to sneeze again? Maybe not. Working with Dig's son in the future. I want to know more about her. Yeah, I think Maya's cool. I think the Black Star concept is cool. I don't know why she's so anti-vigilante. I feel like they're trying to make her similar in stance to what we see current Black Canary, but I like Black Star better than Black Canary, I guess. Seeing Sin reminded me of how much I wanted Sin to become the next Black Canary. Back when we only had one, we just had Sarah, and Sarah passed, and I wanted Sin to kind of take up the mantle, and I thought that would have been fantastic. And of course, in the flash forwards, we see Zoe as Black Canary, which is, you know, fine. We see her bonding with her aunt, Black Canary, present day. See Zoe and William present day, that's cool. See Black Star and JJ in the flash forwards. That's a ship I could probably get behind. Put a pin in that. B, or JJ and William, honestly. B, I mean, it really does make it seem like Black Star and JJ really do seem like they could be the OTA kids, right? Right? Am I crazy? Anyways, Carrie says, bless you. Thank you. I keep sneezing, and I don't know why. It's just spring, I guess. Stormy says, if Oliver dies, I could see Maya being anti-vigilante because that's why she loses her dad. Yeah, kind of like Nora, but with like a little more critical thinking. Maria says, Joya could be the ship name for JJ and Maya. Joya is a cool name. I kind of like that. That sits well. That has a nice ring to it. You're pretty good at this, Maria. Wow. Carrie says, how did this rando villain get a hold of weapons-grade armor and tech that our heroes don't use or other villains haven't tried to steal? Listen, I'm trying to block out the entire villain plot point from this episode because that's a whole other disappointing thing. Your 150th villain was a fan? Like, you thought you were really meta and cool, Mr. Guggenheim, didn't you? Oh. I don't like dragging showrunners. Like, it just feels kind of like boring at this point because everybody does it. But like, bro, help me help you. Really? Like, tell us how you really feel. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. The question was, how did the villain get a hold of this super high-tech 150th episode worthy stuff? Hand wavy plot stuff. That's how they did it. Maria says Joya is courtesy of Twitter accounts Aaron and Sab. Well, they are fantastic at this whole ship name thing as well. Stormy says Nora's Barry's kid. So the poor girl's already losing. Oh, harsh. She's making the same dumb decisions that Barry has. I think Nora's actually kind of interesting over on Flash. And I say this as someone who thinks that Barry and Iris were a terrible ship and an awful choice to have a kid. Like, everything about that is just weird and cringy and odd and ugh. You know, it's like having a kid with your hot older babysitter or something. It's just, But that said, Nora's kind of cool, I guess. Kind of, you know, the bar was set low. It's Barry, and now it's Nora. Brian Perez said, did they say that was Wayne Tech armor? Did they say Wayne Tech? If they did, I didn't catch that. But I can't say that they didn't say it was Wayne Tech armor. I think that they have hinted that there are going to be more Batman references this season, though, so that would make sense, and especially with Gotham ending, there's a few things that probably have, like, the rights being freed up. Carrie says he must have missed that as well, Brian. Kate says, I thought that the anti-vigilante was working with the mayor for most of the episode. They really try, they like on this show, and this isn't a complaint, this is just an observation, they like on the show to have your, like, real villain and your social villain. So you have your real villain being the person who's trying to actually go kill part of the city or do whatever, and then you have your social villain who's just sort of a foil to Team Arrow who's trying to thwart them. Kate's clearing it up. She says it was Wayne Enterprises, not Wayne Tech Armor. Okay, Wayne Enterprises, close enough. You have your real villain, you have your social villain, so that you can have Team Arrow kind of getting attacked in two different ways, and they can have their heroes fighting back in two different ways. So it's like, we gotta go fight this villain, but the police captain is also onto us, or we gotta go stop a bomb, but we also have to stay under the radar and appear at the social function, you know, that sort of stuff, right? Which is fun and, you know, kind of par for the course for hero type of shows, but I think that was really the purpose that the mayor served in this. She was just supposed to be your typical icy whatever, you know. The show loves its icy women that stop all the boys' fun. And at one point we had like every guy in Team Arrow. We had Oliver, Diggle, Renee, and Curtis. Am I missing anybody? We had all of them arrested and like literally no girls there except for the DA. Like, they really love to do this whole thing where you have like this powerful, badass female character, right? So every version of Laurel, not that she's always powerful and badass, but that's what they're going for, right? Moira, his current mayor, Isabel, whatever. They like to like give women a lot of power, make them be some sort of icy bitch. Samantha Watson, Amanda Waller, who else am I forgetting? Lila. Make them somebody powerful and in charge, and have them have like no heart compared to this like rogue guy that's trying to be here. Like, everything that's written by like the OG guys who created this show really likes to go that direction. Felicity's definitely like strays from that, and then as soon as people started really liking her, they kind of almost tried to push even her into that role there for a while, and she kind of naturally stays out of it because that's not the way Emily plays that character. It would be very difficult. You would really have to reach to see her character be that way. But there's nothing innately wrong with characters who are like that, right? Who are like a little more icy and hold other heroes sort of accountable. I think it was like the original purpose of what Laurel Lance could have been, is this direct foil to Oliver, somebody who would never forgive him, had no reason to, and was going to hold him accountable, much like Slade, but from the perspective of justice. And they really just undercut that and instantly were like, no, everybody must be in love with Oliver. And that kind of choice really has, I think, consistently bit this show in the, yeah, they kind of shoot themselves in the foot with that. Brian says, I think it would have been interesting if they all went to prison at the end, so it would have just been Oliver and Felicity being vigilantes. Bro, sign me up for that show. Would watch, would put on repeat. That sounds fantastic. Kate says she agrees with Brian. I absolutely do. Carrie says, did Curtis also use Wayne Tech to do his braids, take them out instantaneously? I cannot tell you how many conventions I've been to where somebody asks Echo Kellum how he braids and unbraids his hair super fast, and he will good-naturedly make up some answer about, well, Felicity designed Tech to do it, or whatever movie, like, someone made that choice who could, like, the costume change choice between how Curtis's hair should be in the suit and how it should not be. Whoever made that choice clearly did not know those hairstyles, did not care about the realism, or both. And it's like not a big deal, right? Because like suiting up and that sort of stuff takes some of them like hours and hours, and we just kind of like movie magic it away. But it's so funny to see this guy have to like defend this choice that was clearly not his choice between the two hairstyles for Curtis in costume and Curtis outside of costume, because some costume designer was like, I've got the perfect idea for Mr. T. Like, you just like, you have braids that kind of look like a T, and then like when he's not Mr. T, then it's not, and you know, like they thought they really like hit hot shit there, and someone was like, you know, it doesn't work, like it takes a while, like you're gonna have to sit for what you gotta call it. But like whoever it was didn't listen, and that's kind of how it went down. Stormy says Felicity could just shrug her shoulders at them in prison like they did to her about Oliver in prison. She could, but she wouldn't. That's the thing. That's why Felicity's a hero, even though she didn't get called a hero in the 150th episode. Tragic. Thank you for staying 7 minutes overtime to hear me kind of talk about some positive things about this episode and kind of complain about maybe more negative things than positive things. I think it was actually a pretty good episode. It just was not a good 150th episode. Brian says, I like when Echo says Kid Flash comes in and does his hair. That's one of the most inventive ones yet. I appreciate that as well. If you have any additional thoughts about this episode that you want to share with me, obviously you can drop them in a comment down below, or you can find me on Twitter. My information is in the description. You can find me as Cami Ray on pretty much every social media site. I'm kind of on all of them. See you next week. Bye-bye.